It was a wonderful night in Paris and an exceptional night. Probably, I don't think it's even sunk in how exceptional that was. What a night for the Springboks. A lot of drama, a lot of controversy. We've all just woken up, had very little sleep. With me again is Nick Mallet and Gavin Rich. Guys, welcome. But we all predicted a very close win for the Boks, and for a while there, it looked like the Boks weren't going to win. But just the way they powered through in that second half was just amazing. 19 points to three in that second half again, with 14 men on the field. Let's start with you, Nick. Just your impressions, overall impressions of the game.
Yeah, good morning, Brendan. I think one of the finest performances from the Boks this season, this year. It's right up there, I think, with our performance against New Zealand away from home, and also when we played so well in that second half against Argentina. What was remarkable about it was. First of all, the game started as we sort of predicted. Really tight encounter. The French flying, climbing in, getting a few turnovers, and in the game with their physicality. We weren't winning scrum penalties. I think we got one with Bone Fenter early on, but we gave one away for wheeling. That had evened everything up a little bit in the set pieces. But the physicality and the aggression on defence was there in that first half. Obviously, we're going to chat about the red card later, but that was a real blow at the end of the first half, knowing that it was that we weren't going to be able to replace Lewis, who was sent off for his red card. The second half was just so courageous, so brave. So much intelligence in the way we played. We kept the ball in the air a lot. We carried with a lot of venom and aggression. Our pack stood up. Suddenly, we had Esterhuizen come in and looked and just fitted in seamlessly. The fact that we had that hybrid player, so we could have him as a flank on our ball and on defense. He could help us. In the back line if we needed it. It was really outstanding. And I think the Maul try, just showed you didn't see his head. He was in there so low. I mean, he might become, the highest scoring centre in South Africa, but he's going to score all his tries from a driving Maul. So a tremendous game. Just a little aside, for someone like Sia to have to be substituted in his 100th game, and to see him standing up on the side supporting the team with so much verve and vigor and enthusiasm and passion, when the team managed to pull through this win against a fading French team, I must admit I was very disappointed with their defence in the second half. They fell away. I thought their two wingers, who were supposed to be such brilliant players on attack, they were pretty fragile and in the physical contests. And certainly the ball carrying, the edge to their ball carry fell away in that second half. So our physicality got on top. The way in which we played, the Sasha and Ngomazulu try, which was beautifully worked at the end. Our courage in not going for 3 points but going for 7 points. Remaining down in their 22 for as long as possible. I just thought it was really well controlled, well organized, and, as I said, one of the top performances this year by the Boks.
Gav, coming to you, just I agree with Nick. It really astounded me how they fell away in the end there, but our physicality got on top. It almost seemed as when Andre Esterhuizen scored their try and we got ahead on the scoreboard, they almost, we grew another leg, so to speak, and they sort of faded there. I did text you there. I was a bit worried when Marnie's first kick was charged down, but in retrospect, after the game, him and Sasha combined exceptionally well, and it's a great plus for the World Cup coming up. Without a Handré Pollard in that position on the field in that last 20 minutes to power home like that in a hostile situation.
And you might be able to tell people what I said to you when you were WhatsApping me. I said we could still win this because you were sort of like almost talking about. But you were sort of almost like sort of saying, well, in 2 years' time, we'll be okay. And I said, we can win this. I'd seen this movie. I had seen this movie before.
Not quite, but...
No, I did. I saw this movie in 2023. The French forwards actually sort of tiring later on in the game. To me, there was a sort of almost like a sense of deja vu. I know we won the previous World Cup. Everybody talks about Andre Pollard's clutch kick at the end. But in 2023, there was a gear shift in that game where the Springboks were outplayed in the first half. You remember that France scored 22 points in the first half of that World Cup quarterfinal, and they only scored 6 after half time. In this game, they scored 14 points. I think we'll all agree they could easily have scored 22 again. They scored 14 points in the first half, and they scored only 3 in the second half. There's actually a pattern there. They say lightning never strikes in the same place twice. But if it's part of a plan that is repeated, then maybe it does strike twice. I just sort of felt like, okay, so I was watching that third quarter and I was actually counting down the minutes because I thought that if we can survive this 20-minute period and not concede a lot of points, not concede a try, then if after 60 minutes South Africa are still in the game, I'll back them to win this game because I've got a feeling those big French forwards are going to tire, and I could see it happening. They looked tired. They started to look very flat. At the end of the game, there was only one team on the field, and when we got to funnily enough, we got to the 58th minute, we conceded that penalty. Ramos kicked the penalty, and they went 4 points ahead. And then after that, there was just that flick of a switch, and I say gear change. I was a bit concerned, obviously, that gear change wouldn't happen because of the red card, because obviously that throws your plans out the window. But the Springboks are very resilient. I mean, there's lots of things you can say about the Springbok team, but resilience is a big key part of their success. And that 20-minute period that they resisted France, that's when they won the game. And the longer that period went on where they weren't scoring, when France weren't scoring, I kept on thinking to myself, well, the Springboks are probably going to win this game. It was almost like what happened in the end was almost inevitable because we've seen it before. Let's look back at the season. It's actually quite interesting to look back at the season for the Boks. All their big wins, look at the halftime score and then look at the end score. The one game, funnily, our worst performance was where we actually were leading comfortably at halftime, obviously in Johannesburg against Australia. But all the other games, it was close or we were behind at halftime. And then we went on and won big in the second half. I mean, the Springboks' ability to absorb pressure and then to come back, and then as Nick said, like, let your physicality just take control. Just one other thing before I pass back to you. You said at the start that, I mean, this is a day for me to say, listen, I told you so. Not really, but Brendan, you'll recall that because you said just now that we all predicted a close game. I was actually a bit irritated when Sasha scored that try because I'd said Boks by 8, remember, and it was an 8-point advantage at that point, and he went over and scored that try. I mean, I'm only joking, but it was, and actually, funnily enough, some mates of mine before the game had said, what's the score going to be? And I said 25-17, which it was before Sasha scored that try. So maybe that's one where Angus Gardner should have maybe ruled against the Boks. But no, it was a great win. I agree with Nick. It was one for the ages, and just the fact to me, because I do feel that I've seen that movie before. I know against France in the quarterfinal in 2023, they weren't quite as dominant in the second half as they were here, but there was a gear shift in that game as well. And I sort of always thought that was going to happen because there was just something about that game. Like the longer the Boks managed to stay in the game, you always sort of felt that if they do eventually get into the lead or they prevent the French from getting a big lead with 20 minutes to go, there was a chance that they would come through and win like they did. And, it's just, as I say, lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place, or it does if it's part of a repeated plan.
I was going to say, I had somebody here on Friday, Gav, somebody at my house on Friday, and they asked me what I thought, and I also said close win to them. And they said, no, Boks by 12. They can't lose this one. And I said, geez, you're quite confident. I'm never that confident going into games. But yeah, it's interesting to see how some other people see it as well. Let's get to the red card, because that was obviously a big talking point. Nick, we saw you on Supersport obviously disagreeing with it. My take was when it happened, I thought, geez, he's in trouble here with the tucked shoulder because it looks 10 times worse. And I knew the replays were going to go over and on and on and on. And I was initially happy with Angus Gardner saying, but the ball carrier is low. He's almost on the ground. It's yellow card threshold for me. And I thought, well, if it goes to the bunker and it gets a red from there, that's fair. But then it almost felt like his two assistant refs almost talked him into a permanent red, which I felt was very strange. I didn't think it was a permanent red. I thought probably it would have been a 20-minute red, given
Yeah.
where we were and away from home and the way those decisions go. I felt a bit for it, but certainly there was mitigating circumstances there. But by tucking the shoulder, the way those slow-mos looked, it looked quite harsh as well.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. That's exactly true. But I thought, to say that it was always illegal from the start was a bit harsh. I think his right arm, if you have a look, he does tuck when he goes in. I think it's his left shoulder that hits him, but his right arm is trying to wrap. And Ramos, there's been a previous tackle I think it was Reinach. Reinach made a tackle on Ramos, and he was he was falling to a knee and trying to make a fast pass as he got hit. So it all happened, in a very short period of time, and he had set off to tackle low. I mean, he was obviously setting off to tackle low and to take out the guy. And had he was about, I would say, a meter off the ground when Lurt hit him. And if he'd been standing up, that meter off the ground would have been around his waist. So I agree with you. I did see when I saw the shoulder that hit him hard, the arm was down by his side and not up. I thought, oh well, that's going to be the mitigating circumstances is that it's the yellow card, and because the player is low, but it is with force and also the shoulders tucked. So I think I would have thought the bunker would have then upgraded to a red, where another player would have been able to come onto the field. It was interesting to see, I think, the TMO and the conversations he had with his two assistant referees, who said always illegal from the start, and they might have gone with the tucked shoulder as saying always illegal. I just thought it was quite a tough call at that point in the game. And as Sia so rightly said, why hasn't the guy gone off? He's supposed to go off with a head injury if it's such a dangerous piece of play. Your thoughts on this, Gavin?
Well, it's also what the referee sees and the picture the referee sees. Like, I wouldn't look at that incident. And if you think back to 2009 British Lions series, there was that clean out that Bucky's Botha executed on Adam Jones, and it led to the Springboks wearing that ridiculous armband in the final test where it said justice for Bucky's. So I wouldn't go as far as that now and say that was like a textbook anything. And once it happened, I sort of felt like that the result that we saw was going to happen, because that's just the way it is these days. I mean, there have been other. The permanent red was obviously what I think we're all in agreement that the permanent red was what was wrong. Yeah. I think that a red for the 20 minutes would have probably been the correct call there. It just didn't look good, and I actually thought that, I know we're going to talk just now about what should have been a penalty try as well, but I actually thought that Angus Gardner had a really good game as a referee. I quite enjoyed his officiating in that game, and everything's very clear. And I know, Brendan, you were saying beforehand that you get irritated because of his constant coaching, but I thought that he was very calm. I thought it was actually a very good performance from the ref generally, but in that particular instance, I think he got browbeaten by his assistants. Yeah. And that was the wrong call. But it should have been a 20-minute red at the very least.
Brendan, if I can come in with one aspect that I thought really worked well for us, given the way we decided to play, or we had to play in that second half, was our bench that came on. That Russia, I believe, held back the most destructive front row. Perhaps not Krobela, but certainly Wilco Low coming on. It really, that was a massive, difficulty for the French, because the moment we had scrum dominance and two fresh locks in there with Afia, who performed very well as did Norkia, and Esterhazen's power and strength in the pack in the close quarters. That we got stronger, and they just got a lot weaker. So the timing of our forwards bomb squad in particular worked really well. And the other point that you've already made, but I think is a valuable one, is the versatility of a lot of our players, the ability of Sasha to go from fly off to fullback seamlessly and to play to play an outstanding game there with Mani coming on. And despite a charge down, as you say, this is the extraordinary thing about Mani Lebok. He can kick it directly into touch or miss a sitter as a goal kicker, or have a charge down kick, or throw a poor pass. But it doesn't affect him one little bit, boy. The very next move, he's still looking for opportunities, still looking to put the ball in the right place with a good kicking game as well. So I thought that worked really well for us as well. I mean, we hardly saw our team on attack apart from the carrying it up, winning penalties, and the territory kicking, which was really good, and also the decisions obviously to go for driving more tries at the end to soak up time, and also because we were very effective at it. So that was a big part in that win. Those 3 tries in the last 20 odd minutes was the bench coming on, and the dominance in our scrum, particularly from the tight end side.
Yeah, Brendan, just so if I can just say one thing, because we were talking about Sasha now. I didn't think it was his best performance by long. I thought it was quite patchy. Some of his kicking out of hand wasn't great, and like he kicked it too long top. But that's I'm almost judging him by his own standards. Yeah. But I thought that the man of the match for the Boks in that game was Malcolm Marx. I mean, that guy stayed on the field. He was on the field. I mean, because Nick mentioned Kobus Krobler now. I mean, he came on, I think, in the 78th minute, Kobus Krobler. Marx plays just about every game, almost for beyond the 70-minute mark. And I think in this game that this was, again, a Malcolm Marx masterclass on almost how to to help out the Boks like he did. I mean, and actually another thing is because I felt the Boks were like trying to sort of like play faster towards the end there. I mean, Theo was shouting from the sideline, like keep up the tempo or something to that effect. I remember somebody saying that, and it was quite weird because the French complained about the time it took to have Malcolm's head bandaged. Remember, and he was sitting on the side, and it did take a long time, and it took a long time. But I was actually thinking that the French should be pleased about that because they were able to catch a bit of air at that stage. But Malcolm Marx, I mean, to me, he was the man of the match for the Boks.
I was going to get to that now, Gav. I was going to say to you now that he would have been my man of the match by far. I mean, I actually missed Krobler coming on because by that time, in the 78th minute, you're already thinking, past the game already. So you don't see that guy often come on. I think he made 1 carry in those last 2 minutes. But I just want to go to what you both said. I agree 100%, Nick, with Mani and Sasha. Sasha as well. As I say, Gav, I agree. He didn't have his best game. In fact, his kicking at post wasn't great at all. He started off well, and then it sort of faded there, but he just kept on going. And same with Mani. And that's also that level of confidence in the team at the moment. They just don't seem to take that knock, and the heads don't seem to drop. They're so confident at the moment in everything they do. And then Andre Estes, and I don't think we realize how important he was for the Boks with the 14 men on the field. To have a player that on your attacking scrum can pack down and give you 8 players in the scrum, and on defense is standing at inside center, that channel, and just being able to swap those. You take away all that sort of advantage of the 14 men that France would have, and just you negate that so much. And I thought that was a huge part of it as well. Nick, I don't know if you want to come into that.
Yeah, no, there were lots of heroes. We haven't mentioned Vita, who also is a guy who had an understated game, but he's involved in a lot of those. Physical contacts, taking it up, getting post-contact meters, getting the ball on the front foot for the Boks. I mean, we just looked such a solid, powerful team at the end of that game. With Erkia, with the freshness of the 2 locks, with Esterhuizen coming on the flank, and his, as I said, his robustness and size, as well as obviously Vita and Peter Steff. It was a big pack. And we were talking about how big the French pack was, but I was looking at them before a couple of those 5-meter lineouts when we were setting ourselves up for driving more tries. And even with the last one, which was the set piece, sort of the practice field move where they changed direction and Sasha scores, they just looked, every man for man, they just looked smaller than us. And so we really were very powerful there. It's true, Sasha's kicking it was strange. He was either doing little dinks for himself or up and unders that were a bit long and were marked with ease. So it wasn't quite as accurate as his normal performance, but at no time could the French take their eyes off him. And as I said, when he moved to fullback, it wasn't as though you felt, wow, there's going to be a problem there. He carried on from from where Damien left off. I thought a lot of good physicality, good counter attack, and he took his try so well at the end. So it was, I did think that if we can, move on to that second controversy, in my view, the yellow card, and the no penalty try. I listened to Nigel Owens talking about the probability of a try being scored, and almost the exact situation like that, where they were about 50 meters out though, and a player knocked the ball down when a man was on the overlap on the outside, and there were a couple of covering players. And he said, obviously, the covering players do come into the discussion, but and the further you are from the try line, the more you've got to take into account the fact that the guy won't score the try. But he said when you're within 15, 20 meters of the try and the ball's knocked down, and there's a player who, if he receives the pass, is in genuinely a good position to score or to draw the final defender and pass and score, he said the balance of probability rises immediately there, and you've got to take into account the penalty try. So I thought while Angus Gardner did have a good game, I thought in that instance, had we been 4 points down at that point and he didn't give us a penalty try, we'd be talking a lot more about that situation now.
Gav, you want to chime in?
I was sort of quite pleased that he didn't award the penalty try in the end, just because I just know. I mean, the French bleated like mad after that 2023 game, and a referee awarding a penalty try against them. So instead of that, I think it was that when Grant Williams went over, or was it Andre? Because it was just before. Sorry,
I think it was just before Grant Williams' try.
Yeah. So because we scored almost straight away after that, and so I was almost pleased. Well, that it's not the referee who sort of decreed that the 7-pointer is going to come. It was eventually we went over and scored ourselves. Almost like, in a way, I've got a weird sort of pleasure as a South African about the fact that we were down to 14 men for the entire second half and still won the game. Because remember, there was the narrative after the World Cup final was New Zealand were down to 14 men, and people forgot that Cheslin was off for 10 minutes and Sear was off for 10 minutes of the second half of that World Cup final. So, it was just proof that you can actually still win when you're down to 14 men, and not just win, but win by 15 points against France, who don't lose. I mean, France do not lose in Paris except to South Africa. I mean, that is the matter. They've gone 16 games now. They've lost twice. In the last 16 games that they've played and started at France, both times it's the Springboks. So to me, it's not there's a sort of certain consistency to the narrative, and both times the Springboks, as I said earlier, I think sort of almost won the same way in the sense that we outlasted them. So it was a very great evening for the Springboks from that point of view.
I want to come in here and just ask you guys both your opinion, because I feel, fair enough, we haven't had the best season if you take the Aussie games at the beginning, but the way that where the Boks are now, you almost feel that they almost a country mile ahead of other teams at this moment. And I know things can change and teams can adapt, and we might have a tough game in Dublin as well that might change that narrative as well. I can't see it on yesterday's, the way Ireland were against Japan. They didn't look that impressive, but it is possible. But at this moment, with the confidence this team is playing, and after last night's result, just how far ahead of the pack are the Boks at the moment? Just, Nick, you want to come in there?
Yeah. Listen, I know exactly what Gavin's answer is going to be there. I mean, a guy as I'm always a sort of glass half empty with the Boks, and Gavin's a glass half full. I'm always a little bit worried. Surely we aren't as good as this. Surely another team must be getting back there. But slowly but surely, I'm seeing us winning when we play badly sometimes, and also when we're up against it, we win. When we had down to 14 men at half time, you could have put lots of bets on the Boks not winning that game. But there, as Gavin so rightly said, the resilience, the sort of team spirit, the fierce, whatever you call it, the South Africanness of our team. They play for bigger, for a far bigger values than just themselves or their teammates. They're playing for the whole country, and they've done some remarkable things. So I'm tending to think, why should we be worried really about Ireland now? I think they're plodding along. Ireland got beaten by New Zealand quite comfortably, and we put 40 odd points against New Zealand when we played at our best in Wellington. So I don't think we should really be looking at saying, we're going to lose a game on this tour. I think it's just a question of how now Rassie manages his squad, how he puts, whether he gives guys opportunities, when will Pollard get an opportunity, when will there be some rotation, and if we do have rotation, can we maintain the level of performance that we've got so far? I think, our pack of forwards, despite not having Oxenshare, they still were comfortably better than the French team. Playing away from home, it just didn't seem to bother them at all. There's so much self-confidence in that group now, and not arrogance, self-confidence, hard work. Excuse me. Wanting to go that extra yard for each other and for their coaches and for their country. So I'm moving more towards Gavin's situation, where I think now we're going to win the games, and it's just a question by how much.
Yeah. Well, actually, Brendan, I sort of, people will say that Ireland is another frontier to cross, which it is, because they haven't won in Dublin for quite a while. But the way I look at it, the objective, if the objective is that the BOKS want to sort of establish themselves as the number one team in the world, as the best team in the world, I would almost say that the Irish game isn't quite as relevant anymore, because they've beaten the kings of Europe. I mean, France comfortably beat Ireland in this year's Six Nations. So if Ireland somehow managed to win against us, and I can't see it, but if they somehow won against the BOKS, I think that they would still be seen as the best team in the world. And there was actually, and by some distance, there was a very good article written by Sam Warburton in the Times a couple of days ago, where he was sort of saying, well, the France can win if they do this and if they do that. But he spoke about and Brendan, this is where I'm going to give you a shout out, because I give you a hard time sometimes. I actually thought I'd seen this article myself. It was on supersport.com, where you actually wrote about, after the championship, the rugby championship, you wrote a piece, got a stats-based piece, where you said that forget about the fact that the Springboks ended up on the same number of points as New Zealand. It was emphatically, the Springboks were emphatically better than all comers in terms of stats. And Sam Warburton, obviously former Lions and Wales captain, picked that up. And it was actually a very good piece. As I say, very much like the piece that you wrote. Forget the results. I mean, even like if we go back to that Johannesburg game against Australia, we talk about so much. I mean, I think we all know that could just so easily have been another big win for the BOKS, and that the BOKS were actually really good for a period of that particular game. Their results are actually not as good as their overall performance sometimes, if you know what I'm saying. Yeah. And we go back to Auckland. That was a game that the BOKS should have won. I mean, that if you looked at the stats after that game, that was a game that the BOKS should have won. They were sloppy. They let that one get away. The following week, the BOKS should have actually been ahead at halftime, but they weren't. And then they went and they put on 43. Well, I don't know how many unanswered points it was in the second half, but it was very embarrassing for New Zealand. So I think the Springboks are yeah. I mean, I think that Sam Warburton sort of summed it up, just in terms of their stats. And just one thing on that, I might ask Nick this, because I just sort of felt that the All Blacks, the French were very direct for the first part of yesterday's game. And then it was almost like that second try they scored where they went around, it was almost like they started to think we can outflank the BOKS and we can sort of start playing a wide game. Almost like they got seduced, I thought. Because then in the third quarter, they were suddenly not as direct, and they were trying to sort of spread the ball to the wings all the time. And I think that actually caught them a bit.
Caught them out. I thought certainly the first half, when they played with the similar sort of rugby that we do, and I know that Fabien Galtier is a huge, he studies what Rassie does a lot to try and get his team to improve. And he feels he's got the strength in depth to play a similar style and a similar type of game. And he wants to kick a lot. He wants to play territory. He wants to do the pick and goes with his forwards and to put pressure physically on the opposition. But remember, they were playing off a penalty advantage there, and both of those were sort of, hallelujah left-hand passes. It was one of those James O'Connor one, which was 20 meters, and Australia got away from us down the right in that game at Ellis Park. The similar one from Intermac was under severe pressure, and he got it back, and he passed very deep. But both of those left-hand passes were outstanding. And perhaps you're right. Perhaps they thought, hang on a sec, we can outrun these guys, and it doesn't work. Sometimes our work rate, our fitness, our physicality, our working for each other is exceptional. So when they weren't getting the forward momentum through their pack, I mean, it's the old story. If you do not go forward and get momentum and get on the front foot, then running the ball without that momentum is very dangerous. And we've seen it when it's happened to us, Ellis Park, as I said. Even when we had momentum, but we threw loopy passes inaccurately, we let the other team back into the game. And I'll go so far as to say we should have beaten Argentina in the decider by at least 15 points if Colby hadn't thrown that interception pass that brought them back into the game. So it's almost like we're learning all the time not to make those stupid mistakes. Don't do it, Don't do the sort of 20-80 pass in the hope that you can score tries. It can damage your team badly. And in the last few games, we're getting fewer and fewer of those ridiculous passes and more of the hard work, which I think is absolutely invaluable to win Test match rugby.
We've got about 4 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask you guys for a quick comment on the other games as well. It was returned to type, except for the 20 minutes in the second half for Scotland, where they got level with New Zealand, but New Zealand always seemed to have too much in that game for me. And then the one that I said to Gavin, I predicted on Friday, I said that I wouldn't be surprised if Italy do shock Australia, just with the amount of confidence that Italy are playing with nowadays. And Australia, I don't know if you agree, Nick, they almost seem to have regressed to back where they were before the Lions tour. They were on a high when they beat us, but they've almost gone downhill from there.
I'm not sure if you saw it, Gavin. I was traveling. I was actually going to Supersport last night, and I missed that part of the game. I didn't see the end of that Italy game. I only watched up to 6-5 or whatever it was. And apparently Italy, really played well. So I can't really comment on that, except I'm delighted for Italy. I really am. Yeah. But on the Scotland game, if I can just quickly, this will be my last comment. I think that game could have turned on 2 tries. One which wasn't awarded, and rightly so. Graham dropping the ball in the in-goal area. When he was over the line, he just had to put it down, and Scotland would have gone into the lead against New Zealand and put them in under a lot of pressure in the last 10 minutes. And Mackenzie's outstanding finish, where 9 times out of 10 you'd have expected him to be bundled into touch. So a 14-point turnaround. I thought New Zealand were on the right side of that. I thought Scotland did really well and could easily have been closer than they were.
Gav, before you go in, just to tell the Nick also knows, it almost seemed to turn the Italy game on there was a try to Carter Gordon. Yeah. There was a rip, which didn't look like a rip to me in the replays, and the Italians were very upset about it. And but it sort of ripped out, and he just picked up the loose ball and he went through and scored and gave Australia the lead. And from that moment on, Australia went in the game again because Menoncello just stepped up. He was exceptional in those last 20, and the 2 wingers just scored tries, and they blew Australia away in those last 20. Gav, you want to come in?
Yeah, well, Nick mentioned earlier that I'm always glass half full when it comes to the Springboks, and I think you probably agree that even from before the Lions series, I'm probably glass virtually empty when it comes to Australia.
Glass with no liquor in it.
I've never really sort of been bought into this whole thing about Australia's improvement, and to be honest with you, I've got a bit of more of a fixation with England at the moment as a growing team. I really think that they are a growing team. So I was flicking between those 2 games because they were played at the same time. So I could probably talk more about England than Australia-Italy game, but that result didn't surprise me because Australia, to me, have have been on the wane a bit. So, as you say, their big win against us in Joburg was the highlight of their season. And ever since then, it's because I felt that they were lucky to get to win one game against Argentina. They should have lost both those games, and then they lost quite convincingly to Australia. I mean, to New Zealand. So to me, Australia, like, there was a lot of hubris about Australia that wasn't justified, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think let's leave it for there. We'll be back sometime in the week, probably around Wednesday-ish, to talk about Italy, who obviously after that win will have grown an extra leg for us. It's going to be an interesting game. Should be one the Boks should win. But guys, thanks for getting up on us on the early morning. I know none of us have had much sleep, so go and enjoy what's left on the Sunday. The birds are chirping a bit louder this morning, sun shining brighter. It's always wonderful when the Springboks win. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Brendan. Cheers, Gav.